you're not going to ride a bike, much less race one. You're not going to play football. You're not going to do sports. You're not going to surf. You're not going to skateboard. You can't do all these things. And I was like, well, I'm a pretty good sized 12-year-old kid in San Diego. We have surfing. We have skating. We have, I'm going to do these things, Doc. And I did.
Is the podcast that is inspiring people to have everyday meaningful conversations to gain perspective and help the world.
Welcome to Tulsa Talks. Today we have Jon Hinkle as our guest. He works at a hidden gem in Tulsa that I did not know about until I went to a networking event. It's an amazing place that you guys should know about if you don't, and you should go see it and meet Jon in person. The venue is called the BMX Hall of Fame.
The National BMX Hall of Fame, yeah.
National BMX Hall of Fame. Right here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and a lot of people don't know it exists.
Correct. That's one of the first statements I get from people when they come in is, we didn't even know this was here.
And it's a big deal. It's beautiful.
Thank you. It's a big place. I had absolutely nothing to do with building it or designing it. I just worked there.
Yeah, what do you do for the company?
I'm technically the administrative manager for the facility. I kind of handle shipping, receiving. I do greeting people when they show up. I fill in for the curator at the museum when he's gone to explain the sport or answer questions about the sport for people. I do a little bit of everything around there, helping with events that we have coming up or that we've had, clerical work, just basic stuff as well. And from being in the sport for as long as I have, I help promote the sport when I can, because otherwise I wouldn't be doing it for 40 some odd years that I've been racing. And
tell us a little bit about what brought you into BMX racing.
Well, what brought me into it was probably growing up in Southern California in San Diego. We had a lot of motocrossers. Rick Johnson, local motocross racer, actually married one of my classmates from high school. They're still married. Marty Smith, who passed away just a couple of years ago, he was a famous pro motocrosser. Brock Glover. We had a lot of off-road, so we had a lot of desert experience and things like that. Plus, growing up as a kid, everybody watched ABC's Wild World of Sports. Everybody saw Evel Knievel.
Oh, yeah.
That was the biggest and probably one of the most commonly quoted as or being stated as the inspiration is watching old motocross on Wide World of Sports, watching Evel Knievel with his jumps. That just inspired us as kids to get out and ride.
Why spinning pedals instead of riding a bike?
Motorcycle. Because we had bikes, and not everybody could afford a motorcycle. Not every parent wanted their kid on a motorcycle for that matter. But much like how the sport started with kids of motocross racers who were at the races with their dads, and they would go off and build a jump. Then they started building a turn. Then they started making their own little track. And the promoters are like, well, the kids are trying to copy what the dads are doing. Let's just start having races for them too and get them involved. So that's how the sport started. BMX stands for bicycle, moto, cross. MX, that we just put the B in front of it because we're bicycles.
And about when did this all transpire, when the promoters saw that the youth were
when
doing
the promoters started seeing it, I would say somewhere in the early 70s. I want to say one of the first major sanctioning bodies was somewhere around 74. I'm not positive on that. The sport itself, there's also some debate between the U.S. and Europe. Of course, a lot of the U.S. people are like, it's a U.S. sport. It's a U.S. sport. Well,
what does it matter?
What does it matter for
that? We're living on this little planet together.
Yeah, and okay, country pride and whatnot. Okay, but some of the people in Europe say it started, in the 30s, 40s, whatever, with people riding bicycles on dirt. I'm like, well, riding in an oval on dirt on a bike is not the same as motocross or
Right.
BMX.
Right. Yeah. That's like those wood tracks. I mean, just because
Yeah.
you're on a wood track and you convert
Yeah.
over, it's not motocross.
It's not, yeah, it's not the same. I mean, oval car racing compared to off-road racing. It's auto racing.
Right.
They're not the same kind of, the same thing with Indy cars and NASCAR, different types of vehicles.
Right.
So, it's just something different. But for BMX, that's what got us into it was we saw Evel Knievel. We wanted to jump. We wanted to do all these cool things, and that was just the 70s and growing up in the 70s. And then in the 80s, when it started picking up in the late 70s and 80s, like in my town in San Diego, we had, I think at one point, 9 tracks running at one point, and not all of them were affiliated with each other or major sanctions. So it's one of those, the sport grew from grassroots.
So is there a major association now?
We are the major association in the U.S. for BMX racing. We are the main sanctioning body. I know that there are individual tracks around the country that run their own thing, and that's great. It's not USA BMX. It's not what we do, and we're affiliated with USA Cycling, which is the U.S.'s governing body for all cycling. They're the ones that are tied in with the UCI, which is the World Cycling Organization. They're the ones that run the Tour de France and all those big road cycling races. They're the ones that do the downhill mountain bike world championships. They're the official world sanctioning body.
So you're associated with this bicycling community that's worldwide, that's then national, and then you guys have your section of it, which is BMX.
Yes, we have, and we're like USA Cycling. They don't technically sanction, I guess, I'm not sure how it really works, but they tie in some of their things like the collegiate championships and the national championships. Those are run on a specific day during one of our national weekends. So it's coincided, like when the UCI has their World Cup championship qualifiers here in the States, any of them that they have here in the States, like they had one here at our facility last year in April. Those are typically they're run in conjunction with one of our nationals. Like we had one in Florida earlier this year. The World Championship qualifier was on Friday. Our nationals were Saturday and Sunday. They will utilize some of our staff that they hire, and our staff would be working for them that specific day.
And you were telling me something pre-recording about you guys having a big event in May.
Yes, coming up May 9th, 10th, and 11th. Excuse me. We're going to have our annual, what we're calling the Legacy National.
And this is of 2025.
Correct.
Because that's when we're recording this one. Is it normally like that second weekend in May, or does it vary?
Well, the building itself, the facility has only been open for 3 years now.
Okay.
Before that, we had a national event, typically in February, at the Ford Truck Arena at the fairgrounds, called the Sooner Nationals. Since this has been brought here now and we can have the race here, we've moved what was the Sooner National to now becoming the Legacy National. And we've only had 3. Yeah, we had one in 22, 23. Last year, we moved it to September because of the World Cup qualifier that we had in April. But typically, we try to run it in that end of April, beginning of May-ish time frame.
And what does this national event mean? What is this, like the big deal, or is it one of the big deals in BMX
This
racing?
so we have, for when it comes to racing, you have your local racing, you have your regional racing series, and you have national series.
Okay.
So like a regional series would be like we have within the regular season, which our season is probably the longest of any youth sport or any sport for that matter, January 1st through December 15th. 2 weeks off. That's it.
So this is not the finale of the season.
No.
This is a national event.
This is a national event, and the national events, you're going for the national titles and to see how you compare against other riders from around the country.
Yeah.
We have state series, which is within the state.
Mhm.
We have Gold Cup series, which is a regional, like where the Oklahoma is in the South Central, I believe is the district we call it, or the region we call this one. And then there's like in Gold Cup, we'd be the South Central.
Okay. But these national events, how many people come into Tulsa
For this event, we're figuring we're going to have traffic of somewhere around probably just in racers, probably about 500 racers per day. They typically bring in 2 to 3 extra people with them on average. Sometimes it's a whole family of 5 or 6 people. Sometimes it's a single person. So the average, though, is about, I think, 2 or 3 people per racer.
Yeah. I've been around different racing and different scales of it. The NHRA, I've spent 3 or 4 years traveling a little bit with one of my dad's friends, and my brother did BMX racing somewhat on a regional, almost a national level with his children. And all these NASCAR, you see them going down the road, you see their rigs. What does a typical rig look like for a BMX racer?
Well, for just your average Joe racer, just your general, not necessarily on a factory team or anything like that, because we have those levels as well. We have your everyday local racer.
Yeah, but these guys that are coming in for the national event.
Coming in for the national event, and everybody's welcome to come out. It's free to come watch. There is a parking charge, but other than that, it's free to come watch the races when we have these races. Some people have huge, big rigs.
Like what? Describe how big is the biggest you've seen. Like an
Well,
18-wheeler for a bicycle?
Yeah, because they carry their whole pit. They carry their entire pit canopies, pop-up tents. They may have fold-up tables.
Yeah, I'm thinking
plus
like a
bikes.
bicycle in the back of a truck.
But then there's people like me who are I'm just on my own. I do my own thing. I have a bike rack on the back of my car. I put it on there. If I want to, I can take the bike rack off. I can put my seats down and put it in the car. I don't want to all the time because it's a hassle. Other people have trucks. Some people have vans. Some people have full touring rigs so they can travel around the country and hit these races.
Yeah. I was actually thinking that way that I would think that I might do it is like with my motorcycle trailer,
Like-
enclosed trailer, small,
Some people have
convenient.
enclosed trailers. Some people have box vans. Some teams will still utilize box vans to get their stuff from race to race for their pit setup, tools, extra parts. A place for their riders to go chill for a few minutes. Get away from the public if they need to, or if they had a bad wreck or whatever, go get a little shade or something.
So these guys race from, you say, January through December? Couple of weeks off?
You can race.
Opportunities to do that.
The tracks have the opportunity to be open from January 1st through December 15th. That's the points-paying season. That's where you can accumulate points for district. National points are only given out or only earned at national events. And then at the final race, which is the Grand Nationals, which we hold here in Tulsa every year, Thanksgiving weekend, that's when you get your national number. The national number is different than a district number. It's different than a Race of Champions number. It's different than a state number. So there are some differences in what you can go after, just as there are different proficiency levels in the sport for riders. We have novices, which used to be called the beginner class, intermediates, experts for the amateur ranks in the 20-inch class.
Yeah.
Cruiser classes are just age groups, and if you got to race X pros or experts, well, that's who you're racing.
Yeah. I think it was a letter system in motocross that my brother's family used to race in. It was just some kind of lettered system that showed how advanced you were so that they could keep the field somewhat competitive. And then you kind of advanced through that stage as you wanted to. You could promote yourself through that.
Yeah, we have an advancement way with the novice, intermediate, and expert system. I know, and they just recently, I think, changed what the parameters are, what the X amount of wins from in the beginner class or novice class, and you move up to intermediate. X amount of wins in the intermediate class, you move up to expert.
Okay.
Once you're expert until you either quit for X amount of years, and when you come back, they may put you back to intermediate because you haven't raced in so long, or you decide to turn pro. There is no, we're turning you pro. There's no, you have to go pro. Yeah. There is, you have to go intermediate. You have to go expert.
So when you take that level up to the pro through this process, seems like it would take a lot of energy and a lot of resources to be pro, to travel all the time and do this.
To actually make a living at it, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you have to apply yourself. There were some heydays in the 80s where riders were getting 6-figure salaries for a year, or taking home 6 figures in the 80s for riding a bicycle. So that inspired a lot of us to try to go for the pro career because we thought we might be able to do that.
Yeah.
Those days are long gone.
Yeah.
And that's why there's a guy who's from my hometown, a guy named Nick Long. He travels the country. He, his wife, and now their daughter and their cats travel the country. He does clinics. He does teaching private one-on-ones at times, but he does mainly group clinics, teaching the sport to kids and helping them improve. That helps supplement.
And he still races full time?
And he still races. He's in the vet pro class. He actually got hooked up with Huffy Corp this year. So he's I believe he's their team manager now.
So that was my next question is, in the other arenas that I've experienced there, and we can all see them, there are sponsorships with big decals.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the same with BMX? Can you go along that route?
Yes. We have factory teams. We have individual sponsors. We have some riders go out completely on their own. Like this year, unfortunate circumstances, a really good girl, Peyton Ridenauer, she lost her ride with Mongoose. She was in the she was in the Olympics a couple of years back. Or she's actually ridden in the Olympics. She's been part of the Olympic team. She went to Paris last year as an alternate. But she ended up losing her ride with Mongoose. She's doing it on her own, but she's got help from WD-40 Corporation. She's got help from Fly Racing, which is her uniform sponsor. I'm sure she's getting discounts from other companies. I know she's still got some of her other co-sponsors that she had, like Shimano, which is one of the biggest bicycle accessories and component companies in the world. Keep hitting that microphone. So you can do it on your own. And a lot of folks will try and go get that one big sponsor that covers everything. Others have gone the route of, I'm going to get a sponsor for this. I'm going to get a sponsor for this. I'm going to get a sponsor for this. I'm going to get a sponsor for that. And, I'm going to have a grip sponsor that gets me X amount of money and grips. I'm going to have a number plate sponsor, X amount of money and number plates.
Yeah.
Tires.
Yeah.
Hubs, pedals, whatever you can get, it's out there if you want to try. Yeah. Some people have brought in some major outside companies that had, why are they here?
They have sponsors that have nothing to do with
sometimes
bicycling.
Yeah, sometimes just because they saw an opportunity to help out a group of kids.
Look at NASCAR and all of those cars. I say all of them. A lot of them, those sponsors have nothing to do with automobiles.
Oh yeah. No, that's been a long time thing, and most of them don't. I mean, when you start out back in the heyday of the early days of NASCAR, I should say, you saw pretty bare cars that they have the 427 cubic inches written on the hood because that's what they did back then. I grew up with that. My mom and dad both raced stock cars in San Diego when I was a kid. And the sponsors were whoever you could get. Sometimes it was an auto parts store. Sometimes it was look at like Caterpillar heavy equipment. Okay. What does that have to do with auto racing? Nothing.
Yeah.
But they saw that that was an advertising thing.
Right.
That's what NASCAR is for all those sponsors to bring in the big money is you have a big billboard.
Right.
That's that's.
So with that being said, reeling it back into BMX, there are opportunities for some of those professionals to get sponsored. And I suppose some of the down tier, maybe even the experts get minor sponsorships
Oh yeah,
sometimes.
yeah. And most of those sponsorships are, for the most part, for amateurs, it'd be just a discount on products or maybe free products.
Okay.
Paychecks are still it's a kind of a hush hush thing. If there are any in that, I'm not aware of it.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't, yeah, wouldn't even thought of that.
But no, back in the day there was.
Okay.
Some of the amateurs like on the, when they're if they do a team sheet, because there's team competitions as well. We have a national #1 factory team. We have a national #1 bike shop team. We've had other things like national team, trophy team, or designations, but the teams compete. They turn in a team sheet with certain riders on there, and they count the finishes, and those points add up, and teams, place wherever they place.
Yeah. Do you have any idea of what the top paid BMX cyclist makes on an annual basis now?
No, because it's such an open. Everybody's on their own deal.
Sure.
For one, so everybody's deal is a little bit different structure. It's what they feel they can get out of each company and what that company wants to agree with. Those negotiations, but
You have
really
some sort of a
say.
vague range that somebody might be making, not individual, no names, just
I would
like
say
the top guys. About how much money are these guys making?
I would say just I'm guessing. This is a total guess. I would say maybe 40 or 50 a year. That's with winnings, um, contingency money, for like if they get an ad or they get a picture in a magazine, they can get, depending on your deal, if you get a picture in a magazine, you might get $50. Depending on the size of that picture, you might get 100 if it's a 2-page deal.
So it's not a huge
But it's not
deal.
huge money. It's not like I say the heydays of the 80s when there were 6-figure paychecks, and even the 90s in very early 2000s when it was really big, when the crossover with mountain biking came in, when a lot of the BMX companies moved to mountain biking as well, or rather moved into, and at the same time, some of the mountain bike companies tried to come into BMX. Kona mountain bikes, Specialized mountain bikes, Trek, Gary Fisher, they all came down and started BMX teams. They had full factory teams. Trek and Gary Fisher, which were under the same company umbrella, the same corporate deal, but they had 2 separate teams of factory riders. They had dirt jumpers. They had freestyle ride. They went full on in, and then they eventually went out.
What about getting into it just as a leisurely way of entering it? I think I might want to do BMX bicycling. I'm not sure.
Well,
How do you guys allow people to know that you're there and that the sport exists more than they might know just haphazardly?
well, like we go to schools, try to promote with schools. Like now, there's the oh gosh, we have schools in Owasso, Sand Springs, Tulsa Public Schools that are all starting BMX teams.
Oh, wow.
Edison Eagles has their own riders. The Sand Springs Sandites have their riders. I think Booker T. Washington has a few riders.
And how long ago has this started?
The school thing for here just started in the last year. I know there's been a program in Connecticut run by some of the organizations out there, not sanctioning bodies, but some of the BMX, track operators and people that have, like, some states have their own boards for BMX to help coordinate.
Mhm.
But they get out to schools. They do STEM programs. We have summer camps where they teach STEM ideas as well. They kind of teach them about the bike, show them the kids about how to ride. If a kid has never ridden a bike, there are some of the camp counselors that will pull them aside and teach them to pedal. They don't have to go on the track, but it's a way to get kids on bikes. Also, they put out some flyers at the libraries last year. And it was a little confusing because they didn't put everything they needed to know in the flyer. But basically, if you want to try BMX, or you have a child that wants to try it, and I say those two things because there are adults who still race.
Yeah, you were telling me something about a lady that was 50 years old that was kind of getting into it pretty strong.
Well, there's quite a few ladies who are getting into it again. We do have a super great lady who lives up in Iowa, Miss Kitty Westenauer. And she is going to be 77 or just turned 77. And she still races. And no offense to Miss Kitty, because I love her to death. She's an awesome lady. Does she light the world on fire on the track? No. Does she win every race? No. Is she out there having fun and promoting the sport? Yes. Is she out there being healthy? Yes.
How has BMX affected your health? You told me that at one time you were into the regular main sports and then you transitioned over into BMX for a while.
Well,
how long did you stay in BMX?
Well, I've been racing since 1983. I played soccer as a kid. I took martial arts as a kid. Tried softball at the boys club. I don't know why we had softball, and that back then boys club was just the boys club. It wasn't boys and girls club. Whatever. But the BMX thing, it appealed to me.
What was its appeal?
Again, the Evel Knievel connection.
Yeah. And the motorcycles.
The motorcycle connection. The off-road connection of growing up where I grew up. That was just something we did as kids. We built jumps. I have an older stepbrother who unfortunately passed away last year, ironically also named John. That was fun growing up. He was Big John, I was Little John, and then I was no longer Little John. And he was like, yeah, sorry for all that stuff. Yeah. Anyway, he raced out at the one of the most famous tracks that was from San Diego, Rancho BMX, which now is a housing tract. But so I also saw him and his bike, and I was like, I want to do this. And so I started riding, and I started building my bike up, and I started doing what I need to do to where I could start trying, hopefully get around to racing. And then I had a situation where jumping my bike every now and then when I landed, the inside of my left foot would smack the crank arm. And you'd think that would hurt for a little bit. It would hurt for hours. And so my stepmother at the time took me to a doctor. They said, you bruised the growth center in your foot. Put me, wrapped it up, put me on crutches, sent me home and said, stay off of it. It'll get better, blah, blah, blah. It didn't get better. I ended up moving back to my mom's house. My mom took me to a specialist. They x-rayed both of my feet and found birth defects in each foot. 2 bones in each foot didn't grow together the way they were supposed to in the arch area, which I was also flat-footed. And I was 12 when we found all this out. So they said, yeah, you're not going to ride a bike, much less race one. You're not going to play football. You're not going to do sports. You're not going to surf. You're not going to skateboard. You can't do all these things. And I was like, well, I'm a pretty good sized 12-year-old kid in San Diego. We have surfing. We have skating. We have, I'm going to do these things, Doc. And I did. I played football. I was shot putter and discus thrower on the track team. I wrestled. Like I say, I skateboarded. I surfed. BMX was just the thing to do because I also happened to go to school with one of my classmates was a factory racer. And in 1983, he was the ABA's #1 amateur. ABA is what we were. USA BMX was the ABA. Technically, it still is. Long story. Anyway, and that's all on the wall at the Hall of Fame and Museum. So come on down and check it out. Show you that on the wall and explain the story there. But
we'll have the address in the description, or you can go to CompletePeace.com and find it in Hidden Gems on our community hub page.
Yeah, I kind of forgot where I was going with that.
You were talking about how you were overcoming adversity and continuing life, even though the doctors told you not to do it.
Yeah, my classmate who was a factory rider and all that. Plus, at the time, there were probably 9 kids at my school who all went to the BMX track and raced. I can count, I think, 4 of us that went pro eventually in our careers. But one of them was he was a factory racer. He's a Hall of Famer, still a good friend. He lives up in Washington State now. So it was like BMX was my interest, and here's, I mean, a factory racer. And one of my local bike shops was the home of his factory team and was one of the most influential guys in BMX at the time. The owner of the shop was. And so, I mean, it was there for us to take advantage of if we could. And I did everything I could to get to the track. Luckily for me, the promoter of our local track lived up the street from me. So I was lucky from time to time, I'd catch a ride with him if mom couldn't make it home and get me to the track. Or I'd ride 10 miles up and over a hill to get to a friend's house so I could catch a ride from there to the track that night after school. And then they'd drop me off at home on my way back. And those were the days when you would ride your bike everywhere. I mean, we would ride
I just heard that you rode 10 miles to your friend's house so you could go ride on the track.
Well, it was probably about, it might have been about 10.
That's a lot of energy.
Well, it was what we did. Because back then, as kids, bikes were freedom. That was how we got around. You know, I mean, back then it was you get up in the morning, mom and dad are like, get out of the house, be back by, when the lights come on the street, be back home or be home by dinner time. Can't do that these days, unfortunately. But back then, that was what we did. Our bikes were our freedom. And that's why we went out and rode, and we just did everything we find a place. Oh, that looks like a good jump. We can make that a jump. And we'd go out and ride and have a great time.
Yeah, I have a problem with my eyesight, and so I blame my timidity on that. But I have a brother that, like I said, he and his family were into BMX, or excuse me, into motocross. And when he was probably 5 to 7 years old, he was building ramps to jump across the ditch. Or into the ditch, probably.
Yeah. How many times did we see a couple of cinder blocks with a piece of wood?
Oh, yeah.
And that's all we needed.
Yeah.
And then we got dirt, and we're like, okay, cool. We can shape this, and
Now, if you act this way, you might get hurt, but you might not live as big of an adventure at the same time.
Well, and
so that's our balance in life. And my decision was to not live that and get broken bones, but live this and engage myself the way that I needed to.
And that's where BMX for me has been a big help too, because yes, I take a risk. People are, you guys are crazy. Like when we do downhill mountain biking, you guys are nuts. I'm like, you know what? When I race mountain bikes, that's a lot safer than if I just go out on a weekend and do it. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, during a race, there's people there. There's people watching the course if you crash. There are paramedics handy. If I'm out on a weekend, just wherever in the mountains, and I decide to go for a ride and I crash, I'm kind of messed up.
Yeah.
I'd use other terminology, but I'm trying to be family friendly. The letters SOL come to mind. But, and in fact, luckily for a good friend of mine, another Hall of Famer, BMX racer, who unfortunately had a mountain bike accident. Luckily, he was in a mountain bike park when it happened, Big Bear, Snow Summit, and that he went over the bars. He jumped his mountain bike, went over the bars on landing, and unfortunately had his shock pump in his backpack. And his shock pump was laying kind of crossways in the bag across his spine. And he's paralyzed. So, but because he was at a controlled environment, that helped him. Had he been doing that on one of our weekend rides out in the hills of San Diego, no, it would have taken a whole lot longer to get help to him.
Yeah.
So when we do it in an organized event, to me, that's safer. But yes, you take the risk. But then again, when you walk out the door in the morning, you take a risk. You could slip on ice. And since moving here and we have snow and ice, I'm not used to, even I've been here 9 years now, but I'm still not quite used to that. I used to go to the snow, leave it where it was, and drive home. Now I live in it from time to time. But, just the simplest thing, and you could, and you're on your back. And, you know, you could do what, but if you take a educated approach and okay, yes.
Calculated risk.
That's actually the word I was looking for. Calculated risk. You know, and that's what
educated approach, calculated risk.
Yeah.
Like we take every day in our life, every moment of our life.
But the other thing is and the younger generation needs to figure this part of it out too. If you do this, you know the consequences are the possible consequences. If you do this and you take this risk, don't blame somebody else if you crash or have a problem or get hurt. You have to take responsibility for your actions. That's the other thing. If I'm in a race and I see a chance to blast somebody, if I don't like that guy, I'm still not going to do it because I don't want to be the one who hurt that person. That's not me.
You got to live with that.
I got to live with that. But also, there's no reason to hurt somebody else.
That's what I'm talking about.
This is just, I mean, it's a hobby.
Yeah. And at this point in my life, if your personalities don't get along, why do you want to hurt another human being anyway?
Yeah,
let them go be them.
Yeah, you go do your thing and be happy.
Yeah.
I like one of my good friends, I love racing with him and he loves racing with me because we know we respect each other on the track. And we kind of also know we see openings and we're like, okay, I'm going to take that. We talk and communicate. Most of the time during our races, all you're going to hear from the track is laughter because we're cracking each other up all the way around the track. Yeah, I mean, he pulled a move on me one time and went low, and he's like, I'm sorry. And I'm like, it's cool. And I saw what he was doing, and I made a move to go past him. I mean, but we have fun racing each other. It's camaraderie.
Right.
That's why at my age, and, you know, I've been through the pro ranks for a few years. I've been to the national scene. I've traveled the country doing the nationals. It's camaraderie. It's the friendships. If you go to our YouTube page and go back to the 2022 Hall of Fame induction ceremony, the last guy inducted, TJ Lavin, he tells in his induction speech, his acceptance speech, he talks about things and he says, at the end, there's two things he learned from another friend of ours who actually emceed that year. There's two things from this life he's been living. Stories. BMX. And when we all thought about that, I mean, every racer in that room was like, that's it. It's not so much, we don't remember all the stuff about all of the races that we've been in. We remember certain things that were fun. And we remember the experiences of when we go to places. Yeah. And, you know, like some people are like, no, it's my job. Flying in, doing it, and flying out. I'm like, I'm going to go in. I want to go check out the town a little bit. I want to have some free time. I want to go, you know, experience life. I'm here, yes, but okay. I've been to Denver. You know where I've been in Denver? The airport. Never left the airport. I've flown in, flown out. Never left the airport.
Yeah. That's
all of Colorado I've been to. You know, I mean, St. Louis, Missouri, airport. Okay, you know, I now that I live here, I want to go explore some of these other places.
Jon Hinkle, BMX National Hall of Fame, a hidden gem right in here in Tulsa. Go check it out if you want to experience and embrace life from a thing you may have never thought about. He's a great guy, great conversationalist. Thanks for coming to the Tulsa Talks today.
Happy to be here.
We are here to help you discover or develop your passions, how you can use them, and why you exist. How can we help you help others better?